to Frequalize This. I'm John.
I'm Dave.
And today we're going to be sharing some new music with each other. It's one of our favorite things to do. That kind of really got us into coming up with the idea to even do this channel, right? So we'll be going back and forth a little bit, sharing new music we've been finding with each other. And I'm excited to do that because it's always fun to pick up on something new.
So John, this time I've got a Swedish band. We've got a Norwegian one in the mix. Now we've got a Swedish one. Again, I apologize if I butcher the names of this. Agusa, I believe, is the name of the band. They've got a couple other albums that have been out. I think it's like 3 albums, a live album. They've just, from when we're recording, a couple of days ago, released a new EP. And this is the first track on it, and I'm going to have some fun trying to pronounce this. Lust och fägring. Lust och fägring. I apologize, this is bad. And then in parentheses, it's Sommarvisan.
Yeah, translates to lust and fame. We're all messed up on these pronunciations. Lust and feigning, and then the parentheses is summer song. Yeah, and it feels like a summer song.
It does feel like a summer song because it's the way I was like thinking of it to myself is like it's like this kind of like a frolicking feel to it, and you kind of got a Jethro Tullish feel with some flute playing, complete with that kind of breathy flute playing in there. Has some great moments where they kind of let it rip and they're jamming and they're just really kind of a good interplay between, kind of the flute and the keys and the drums and the guitar and the bass, and they're all just kind of interplaying with each other. It is the first track. It does give a good flavor for the EP and for the band as a whole. It is 14 and a half minutes. So just know that if going in, for some of us, that's an exciting moment. You're gonna go, oh, good. I'm not gonna be done in 3 minutes, But I really, there was especially somewhere in the middle of the song, there was this really fun back and forth interplay between the keyboards and the flute where they're just kind of hopping, and it really gets playful. There were also moments. It was a moment probably 3-4 minutes in that felt like you went from the summer day into kind of a summer evening feel, and you kind of get the ebbs and flows and the arcs of that.
It's a full-on blues section.
Yeah. It was really interesting.
And but I should say, like Dave was saying, it starts out jazzy.
Yeah.
And with a real swing.
Right.
To it.
Yes.
But then this kind of, almost like you're saying, going into an evening, that's a blues thing. The guitar just really starts to open up after the flute has been doing kind of that fun summer day type of thing.
Jaunting around the hillside, and so... Again, this is one of those things that you can imagine, like, sitting outside or taking a walk and enjoying nature as you're listening to something like this. So, hey, if you're going to listen to it, get outside and listen. This is probably not a sit in the house. Well, I mean, you can, but this is a good go out and take a walk kind of a tune.
All instrumental. Yeah. And it was good. And if you're like me and 3.5 minutes into it, you're like, okay, I get it. Hang in there, because like Dave said, if it's shortly after that, around maybe 4 minutes or so, it does have different sections, and tells a story then.
Yeah.
But without the words.
Right. Which is challenging. I mean, in instrumental music, some of the time, I don't always track. Like, some of the time you'll listen to something and you say, wow, what does this have to do with the title? And even though we had to go to the extent of having to get a translation of the title, it very much, the feel of the song and how they named it is spot on.
Yes, absolutely. Enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would, actually. Yeah, so thanks for showing that to me.
Sure.
Yeah. All right, Dave. The next one I played for you was Overlords by We Came From Space from the same album, Overlords. New this year. Now, if you're a fan of We Came From Space, a couple of the songs are actually appeared on an EP from all the way back in 2020. But Overlords wasn't one of them. And that's part of why I picked this, because I was like, maybe you hadn't heard it yet. And they're a band out of, I believe, Pennsylvania. And the big name in the band that you may be aware of if you're into progressive rock music is Bill Hubauer, who's a keyboard player in the Neil Morse Band, or NMB. So this is a 10-minute thing, and it's the first track off the album, and I picked it for Dave because I couldn't remember how well he knew the band, and it's a really good representation of what they're all about. It's got prog stylings, but then it also has kind of glam, power pop, Beatlesque stylings, and then classic rock stylings, and that's really kind of the main three areas where this band rotates or moves around. And this being 10 minutes, they throw all three of those into this. They do have songs that are sort of more just one style. So there's a song later on the album, I forget the name right now, but it's totally in the Kansas camp. So if you like Kansas, you like the Beatles, Queen, and then you like all that kind of smushed together with progressive rock stylings, I think you'll like We Came From Space, Overlords. What do you think?
Well, and when you say smushed together, it's not like, you're spackling varying pieces together that don't work. There's key moments where they make a distinct change from kind of one movement within the song to another, but the whole still holds together.
How many times have you been here?
While at the same time, I think it's like, okay, so you got a band, We Came From Space, so there's kind of a tongue-in-cheek humor to the naming of the band, and
yes.
Then you got the Overlords, and they're singing about the robot overlords, and there's this kind of a campy, kind of, we don't take ourselves seriously, but we're seriously good musicians, and we've got the chops to do it, and here we're going to back it up, but we're still going to laugh at ourselves in the process, and we're going to kind of have fun with you as we're going, which I think maybe is what frees them up to be able to more easily hop and to kind of go, okay, like I think you were pointing out a section in there where it kind of comes to a stop and then moves into a very different kind of a feel to it. And you can get away with that when you've got that type of an overall structure.
Right. A guitar riff comes in all by itself to start the second section of the song, and then it goes into a much more classic rock feel. Whereas in the first half, I didn't really talk too much about the first half. There are huge orchestral moments.
Right. Right from the opening, it's very orchestrally symphonic. It just really kind of a big room feel.
Yeah, and I thought that was really neat. And one of the other things, going back to what you said, kind of about their sense of humor, I didn't really think about that when we talked about this band earlier. I really like that. Now you make me think of that. Is it Ryo Okamoto from Spock's Beard, who has the solo album where the huge epic on it is that there's a monster that comes to life every 10,000 years or something, and the whole village has to try to fight it. And the only thing that defeats it is a progressive rock singer singing the most fantastic melody in the world. So the lyrical references, lyrical references in this to the robot overlords arriving. Yes, yeah, it's fun. Fun song. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, that was good. All right, John, so this next one I've got for you, we're jumping into kind of the prog metal end of things with Nospūn or Nospūn, depending on how you want to pronounce it. I'm not precisely sure. There's a little over the U. It's like Nospun, but there's like a little line kind of a thing over the U.
Yeah.
And the particular song I had you listen to, or we listened together, was Earwyrm. But of course, you can't have that spelled normally either. Earwyrm, but instead of an O, there's a Y. So I'm assuming it's still Earwyrm as a Wyrm, maybe? I don't know.
Which cracks me up because it's an American band, right?
Correct. They're from North Carolina, I think Charlotte. So yeah, you'd kind of think after the number of times I throw out, hey, here's a new Swedish band, here's a new Norwegian band, or here's from Abu Dhabi maybe or something, and but no, this one is actually just from the East Coast. But listening to this band, the big time Dream Theater influence to what they're doing. But I will say, to kind of the chug of the guitars has a whole lot more of a djenty type of a feel to it. So they're a more modern interpretation, you might say, of a Dream Theater. But there are moments where, and this is a debut album, brand new this year. I think it's maybe out a month or something like that, if I'm remembering right. I mean, this is really new. But you kind of get a feel of that, where their influences are coming from. You kind of have a sense that Dream Theater is kind of foundational for them, which that's appropriate. It's prog metal, and Dream Theater is kind of foundational for prog metal, period. But there's moments where they feel like they directly lift like a whole little segment that feels like it would be just as at home in a Dream Theater song. And I don't say that in a, hey, you're doing a copycat kind of a thing sort of a way, but, there's a definite emulation. It's going to be interesting in my mind. I think it's solid. I think they're musically well done, but it's going to be interesting to see how they develop as a band and branch out. So the kind of the gent feel that they're bringing in that's more modern than a Dream Theater was is kind of a little bit of that. So you're kind of seeing a bit of it, but I'm curious to see how this band really progresses as a prog metal band. Vocally, strong, really rip-roaring vocalist.
I'm laser focused with no target, shooting blindly in the dark.
But what were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I agree. They're firmly in current year.
Yeah.
For the seriously down-tuned, I don't know if that, I'm not a musician, so I don't know if it's drop D or what, but it's super low down-tuned, super genty, which is the word you're trying to get.
I'm trying to make it a thing.
Genty foot. Welcome to the Genty channel. Super genty, and so to me, there's a lot of Haken going on there, which of course comes out of the Dream Theater camp originally, sort of, right? So there's a lot of that there, and when you say it'll be interesting to see how this band progresses, I'm thinking the same thing, slightly more critically, like, yes, are we going to be more than just a Haken clone? So that's that, and again, I only know this one song,
right?
So maybe the rest of the album helps prove that out for me. But man, this song is great though. So that's the thing, right? Some people really don't mind Dream Theater clones because it's a sound they love. And I love Haken as well. So I really like this track. It really is an earworm. It's a jam. It goes nuts. And I even like that they're doing it's not that long of a song, and they're doing a lot of different things. Not only are we picking up the Dream Theater you talked about, the Haken I talked about, but there was some vocal thing happened that made me think of Big Elf.
Oh, yeah, okay, interesting.
And then we went into a little power metal section.
Sure. Yeah.
And then there was a math metal section. So it was like...
There's a lot there.
Yeah, and that's the part where if they can do... they're wearing their influences on their sleeve, which is totally acceptable.
Right.
Totally fine. Where you can make an argument that that's not progressive, but that's okay. It's good music. And but yes, I'm hoping that by listening to more of them, I'm going to find more of these little creative arrangements of the pieces to where they're not going to be a Haken clone.
Yeah. Well, and to get a sense of, okay, so how does this band, how does Nospūn, however you want to have fun pronouncing it, that what becomes their sound. And in a debut album, some of the time you get samples and bits and pieces. And, if you go back and think about a classic prog band like Rush. First album sounds like a Zeppelin clone.
Yeah.
It's Canadian Zeppelin, and then they walked away from that entirely.
Yeah.
I don't know that you're going to see something like this where they're walking away from it entirely, but it's like, how does it gel into a uniquely something for them?
Yeah.
That's kind of what's looking forward to, but definitely worth a listen at this point.
Oh yeah, talented, and yes, go give it a listen. I had a lot of fun on that one. All right, Dave, the next one I played for you was from the Great Wide Nothing. And I know we've been covering music that has come out this year, but they do have a new album out this year. And I almost wanted to play you the 20-minute epic from that. But it's actually a part 2. So I thought, you didn't know this band at all yet.
No.
So I thought, let's go back to 2020, where it's a part 1. So the band is Great Wide Nothing, and the album from 2020 is Hymns for Hungry Spirits, Volume 1. This year is Hymns for Hungry Spirits, Volume 2. And so the two albums are bookended by a track called To Find the Light. Part 1 opens the first volume of hymns, and Part 2 closes the second volume of hymns. So I picked Part 1 mainly because it's shorter, just shy of 7 minutes. And I knew it would give Dave a sense for what these guys do. So we get a really nice synth wash intro on this, and then we go into a driving synth bass line as drum fills start to kind of build the tension and add action. And then the synth bass is basically replaced by this incredible, really forward in the mix driving bass line that really reminded me of the way Chris Squire would play and the way they would sort of mix him on some of that old Yes stuff, where it was like you're really listening to a bass run, a bass line, not like a solo though, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So the whole thing really had a throwback feel to 70s prog instrumentation, and then even arrangements. And this particular track stays fast, has a lot of energy. Vocalist reminded me a lot of Roy Stolt. So if you're a Flower Kings fan, I think you'll find a lot to like here, because this is definitely that neo-prog where it's firmly an homage or an ode or whatever that is, right, to that 70s. Like, let's take what we loved about the 70s and let's recreate that sort of arrangement and instrumentation. And I think the Flower Kings are known for that, right? Kind of a symphonic neo-prog.
No, definitely.
So Flower Kings fans will enjoy this. But you don't have to be just a Flower Kings fan to dig it.
Right. Well, and I am a Flower Kings fan, which I know you're not
as much.
Really as much. And so I have a greater appreciation for Roy Stolt and his, kind of vocal stylings or what have you. I actually, it's interesting that I don't know that I caught that feel in there. I was actually wishing that the vocalist was a little more brought forward in the mix. That it felt like sitting back too far. Where the instrumentation really led the charge. That's kind of the only criticism I have. I think otherwise, it flows really well. It's kind of keeps itself moving. Definitely has a kind of a throwback feel, but not in a derivative way. So it's the homage in the best sense, where there's some creativity to it, there's fun to it, the synth use. It's almost there's kind of a the synth almost not quite an 80s feel, but there's like pulls a little, but not quite. It's like almost a flavor.
Yeah.
But doesn't really get into it. you know, because there's certain synth feels that and tones or whatever that are so totally placed in one decade or the other, and I think their usage seems to bridge a little bit.
Yeah.
Which is nice. I mean, that's kind of the unique flavor that they bring to things, which is enjoyable. And you know, I'm glad that this was one that you put in there, even if you kind of cheated on our concept and pulled a song from a couple years ago to point me to the one that's out this year.
Right. Yeah. Just a little bit. Was this the one you talked about the keyboard sounds and that kind of a thing? Was this the one where you said where it was a real John Lord thing going on? Was that?
Yeah. So there was little bits. Track? Yeah. Right. There was. So there was moments where it kind of leaned a little out of the 70s. But then there was moments, I mean, midway through somewhere, there was definitely a classic Deep Purple John Lord feel to the way the keyboards were played, where it just, you know, that, you know, I'm not going to emulate it really here because it's going to get goofy. But it's that, you know, you hear a Deep Purple keyboard or something that makes itself sound like it, you know what that is. Yes. And there's a moment midway through there where that kind of shift comes in, and it very much has that feel.
Yeah. But it isn't all just early 70s Hammond B3.
No.
So you're right. I did not notice that, and I want to go back and hear it now, that the wider range of synthesizer sounds is kind of what you're saying. Yeah?
Yep.
Cool. Yeah. Fun stuff, yeah. And definitely check out Volume 2. If you're already familiar with the band, and if you're not familiar with the band, start at Volume 1, go to Volume 2. Really good stuff.
So you have more prep work for this one.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
All right, John, what do you think? I mean, this has been a blast.
This has been a blast. I love doing this. This is fun stuff.
This is good.
Yeah.
Always great to find new music. Hopefully you found something that hasn't been on your horizon, and, you know, maybe comment and share something that you've been listening to. See you next time.